Hey guys, it's Maddie from Let's Eat Plants, and today we are making summer rolls. Today's recipe is a Vietnamese-inspired recipe, and I think it also may be referred to as fresh spring rolls. And this is actually a surprisingly easy recipe to make. Essentially, you're just going to be wrapping all of your fresh ingredients into a rice paper wrap and then dip it in its accompanying sauce. I actually have two sauce recipes to show you guys today. And with that, let's go ahead and get started. So the first thing we're obviously going to need is our rice paper wraps, and this is what is going to be on the outside of the roll. Now, I have seen before that they do have brown rice paper wraps. I usually don't find them at my local Asian market, which is where I found these, but I have seen them before, like on Amazon and places like that. So I will leave a couple links below. If you prefer the brown rice paper wraps, those work equally as well. It's kind of up to you and your preference. I personally use these white rice paper wraps because they're very easy to find at our local Asian market. Now, besides rice paper wraps, I personally think the hero of this dish is the herbs that go inside. So first up, we have our Thai basil. Now, Thai basil is different from Italian basil. As you can see here, the leaves are quite different shape. I actually do have some Italian basil. Let's do a side by side. So as you can see, the leaves of the Thai basil are very long and narrow compared to the Italian basil. In addition, the stem is often like more of a purple color, whereas the Italian basil is a regular green stem. And in addition to the physical differences, there is also quite a taste difference. If you've never had Thai basil before, it has kind of like a licorice-y taste, I would say, which may turn some people off, but it's not a very strong licorice taste. It is just definitely different from Italian basil. In addition, there is also a basil called holy basil, and it looks similar to the Thai basil, but it is different as well. It has more of a spicy and peppery taste. So you definitely do want to look for the Thai basil if you can find it at your local market. I feel it does really make a difference in these rolls, and it's worth buying if you can find it. Also, if you found this basil tip helpful, I would really appreciate if you give this video a like, as it does really help out my channel and helps me bring more videos to you guys. Next up is our mint. Now, I have two different kinds of mint here. These are both from Q's dad's garden, but I'm pretty sure that the regular green mint is very easy to find in the supermarkets. I usually see it in the same section as all the other fresh herbs. This purple one might be a little bit more difficult to find. I know they sell it at the Asian markets, but I'm not sure about the regular grocery stores. So if you can't find the purple mint, that is not a deal breaker at all. Just go for the green mint instead. And our last herb that we're going to use is cilantro, aka coriander. And I believe this one is pretty common, and I'm pretty sure everybody will be able to find it quite easily. Now, of course, we're also going to need some vegetables. I'm just using carrots, baby cucumbers, and a little bit of fresh lettuce. I'm actually just going to mix the lettuce together with all the herbs and just do like a little greens mixture in there. And those will be our vegetables. And then of course you can also add in things like protein. I'm gonna use a little bit of this 5-spice tofu, as well as some mung bean pancakes that I made. If you guys haven't seen that video for how I make the mung bean pancakes, I will link it in the description box below. You can watch it after this video. So those are the two proteins that I am going to use. And then also the noodles. My mother-in-law says to always use noodles in your summer rolls. So I'm just following her advice, as she was born in Vietnam and makes very delicious Vietnamese food. So I'm also going to use some basic rice noodles as part of the filling as well. So now for the vegetables, I think I've showed in videos before that, like the carrots, for example, you can use different types of tools to make them into shreds. You can use a peeler, you can use a grater, you can use a spiralizer, you can use a knife and just julienne them, but essentially we're looking for long, skinny strips. And then with the cucumbers, I find it's actually just easiest to do it with the knife. So again, you just want them in long, thin strips, but the actual thickness of each strip is kind of up to you. But essentially, imagine biting into that roll. You don't want too big of a piece, so just keep that in mind when you're chopping your veggies. So for the mung bean pancakes, I actually modified this recipe a little bit by just adding in some chopped up lemongrass. Now, lemongrass is a very commonly used ingredient in Vietnamese cooking, so I thought it would be nice, instead of doing a lemongrass tofu, to actually add some to these mung bean pancakes. So that's really the only difference for these mung bean pancakes, and of course that's not really a traditional ingredient. I just like to add in extra beans, especially hidden ones where I can. So I thought that would be be a nice way to add a little bit extra flavor and a little bit extra texture and protein and all of those good things. And now for our herbs, I just did equal parts of all the different kinds of herbs, and I just pulled them off the stems because you don't really want to bite into a big piece of stem when you're biting into these rolls. And then I'm also just taking some lettuce pieces and putting those in there as well. Now, you could do a rough chop of all these veggies, but I just feel that it makes a more beautiful mixture. And like, since the rice paper wraps are see-through, you will see some leaves peeking through the wrapper. So I like to leave the leaves whole, and that way it just looks a little more beautiful. But of course, that is personal preference as well. So essentially what we have here is kind of like a big salad with a bunch of herbs in it, and you're just basically wrapping this salad into a rice paper wrap. So you could even do this as a salad if you don't have the rice paper wraps and you just want to eat all of these other things. It makes a really nice salad. I guess that would be like a deconstructed summer roll, which is totally delicious as well. Okay, so now we're ready to wrap. We have our herbs and lettuce. We have our rice noodles. We have all of our chopped veggies, which are carrots and cucumber. We also have the 5-spice tofu and the lemongrass mung bean pancakes. Now, one thing that I have learned, a little tip that I will pass on to you guys, is for these rice paper wrappers. As you can see, they start out completely stiff and dry. And essentially what we're going to do is rotate them through the water for about 10 seconds to make them soft enough to roll into a roll. It kind of takes some practice to learn how to work with them, but something that I've learned, like I said, is to use medium lukewarm water. So you don't want to make it too cold, you don't want to make it too hot. Now, here's the pro tip. You don't want it so soaking wet that it is like a wet rag and can easily be crumpled into a ball. That is too wet. So you're gonna wanna watch it and take it out from the water while it's still slightly stiff, because it will continue to soften as you're adding in all the veggies and wrapping it. So you're just going to want it to be at a pliable state without being overly soft. And then you also wanna make sure you have a work surface to wrap your rolls on, and it's just easiest to use a like clean plate or cutting board or something like that. And you want it close to your ingredients. So I'm just going to swap these around. So I'm going to rotate the rice paper wrap through the water first, then put it back on the cutting board, and then add everything in, fold in the edges, and then roll it up. So we're gonna take one, add it to the water, count to about 10. If your rice paper is a little bit older, it may take a little bit longer. If you're using cooler water, it may take a little bit longer, but usually about 10 to 15 seconds. And now you can see it's translucent and pliable, but not so soft that it's lost its shape. There's still some shape there. And now the other thing that I always forget is don't fill your roll too full. You actually want it on the less full side. Not only is it easier to roll up, but it's also just easier to eat. So do just keep that in mind as you are filling your wraps. I know we want to put as much as we can in there, but trust me, it'll be easier to roll and easier to eat. So just add your greens first, and then a tiny little bit of rice noodle, and then some carrots, a bit of cucumber, and anything else you may like. And then you just do the sides first. I find it's easiest that way. And then you want to wrap it as tight as possible without ripping the wrapper. So I like to fold in the sides and then take the edge closest to me and kind of make a tight little wrap if I can. And then just keep rolling and tightening, kind of like you would a sushi roll. And there you have it. And then just stack them on a plate as you go. They can get stuck together, so just be careful about that. And then just keep wrapping and rolling to your heart's content. Now, even I have had mistakes before where the wrapper is either too wet or too dry. If it's too wet, just fill it as quickly as possible and wrap it the best you can. If it's too dry, you can actually add a little bit more water by dampening your fingers and just adding it to the edges until it's soft enough to roll it up. Now you can eat these rolls just plain by themselves because they have a lot of flavor from the herbs, but traditionally they are eaten with some kind of dipping sauce. So I'm going to show you two different sauces that you can use. The first dipping sauce is actually going to be the same as the dressing that I made in the Asian noodle salad video for the Vietnamese salad that I made. So if you guys want to see that video, I will link it in the description box down below, and also I will write out the full recipe in this description box as well. But basically it's a mixture of vegan fish sauce, water, lime juice, maple syrup, and a Thai chili for a little bit of spice. Now for our second dipping sauce, I actually consulted with my mother-in-law for this recipe because she always makes this very delicious dipping sauce to go with our fresh rolls. So her recipe is vegan, but it's not exactly whole food plant-based. There are some a little bit less healthy ingredients in there. So I'm not going to share that recipe today. I'm going to share kind of a westernized recipe that I see a lot of people use, and that is a peanut butter based recipe. Now this isn't exactly an authentic recipe, as I mentioned, but it is very popular to eat with these rolls, and I know that many people like it. So I'm actually going to show you guys a recipe that I modified a bit with peanut butter powder to give it that peanut flavor. But if you only have peanut butter, that will work fine too. So we will need 4 tablespoons of powdered peanut butter. I like to use the powdered peanut butter because, as I've mentioned previously, it is less fat than using regular peanut butter, but regular peanut butter definitely works in this recipe as well. 1 tablespoon of low sodium soy sauce, 1 tablespoon of rice vinegar, 1 tablespoon of maple syrup. And now instead of using water to thin it, I'm actually going to use lemongrass tea. This is just some lemongrass tea that I brewed this morning. And I just really like the flavor that this adds into the sauce. But of course, if you don't have lemongrass tea, then you can always just use water instead. And 3 tablespoons of lemongrass tea or water. So here we have our beautiful rolls and our 2 dipping sauces. Of course, both of these recipes will be in the description box if you want to check those out. In fact, I'm going to leave the Asian noodle salad video right here in case you guys do want to see the recipe for this dipping sauce. And of course, thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed today's video. If you're new here, feel free to subscribe. I'm making new videos every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. And with that, let's eat plants, and I will see you guys next time.